Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. Myself, Ramses, and Tony are going to be talking about Fox. So, Fox has been a relevant character for quite some time in every single Smash game. I think his worst Smash game was Brawl, but I'm pretty sure we've done a Fox episode already, so we don't have to go too much into the history. Obviously, it was a very relevant character in Smash 4. Um, but coming into this current meta, it's interesting because now we're seeing another Fox. Now, Pasiriman did this around like Frostbite pre-quarantine. He did pretty well at a Frostbite. I think him and Light placed the same. I'm not too sure, or I'm pretty sure Light maybe outplaced him. It was a while ago, but it was pre-quarantine, right? So now post-quarantine, we have another Fox player being able to get into top 8 of an S plus or a P tier tournament, right? And we haven't seen that. I don't think ever. I don't think we've ever seen that, like an S plus tier with like a Fox
Two
outside of
Foxes.
Light. Right,
Yeah.
right. At least in NA. Maybe that's happened in Japan because now Japan gets a lot of S plus or Premier tiers, just because so many ranked players reside there now. But yeah, Kananabe made a huge splash. Uh, and yeah, I think it's a different style of Fox, and I think we've all been Fox believers. I mean, we can go around the horn. I started solo maining Fox during quarantine because I mained Wolf until that point. Like during up until quarantine, I mained Wolf, and then I like played Fox on the side. I just like playing Fox, and then I started believing in the character a lot more. My only question was he solo viable? But I think Fox stocks have gone up quite a bit after, especially the buffs and the bug fixes to down air. So before the buff slash bug fixes, I didn't really believe in the character. I still think now with hindsight looking back, pre-patch Fox still would have been pretty good, but down air not working was a big deal, and we see a lot of stocks getting closed out with down air. So I mean, I'll stick with that opinion. I think pre-patch Fox I don't think would have worked because you need down air to work on floaties. But yeah, Ramses, what are your opinions about Fox throughout Ultimate's lifespan?
I Fox has been in a really weird place for me because I think with Ultimate, there's been this opinion that advantage state is like the most important game state, right? And um, with that, Fox has become a bit of a double-edged sword where his advantage state is obviously great, but also in ways not as explosive as some other advantage states because he doesn't have the gimping potential. And in a lot of cases, even when he's juggling you, his up air will kill, but you can limit the kill potential by like air dodging and taking like a lower up air. So he is very strong in continued advantage states, but he's not as janky and he's very easy to jank, right? He's easy to combo, lightweight, better recovery. And I think that partially made me less of a Fox believer early on because I feel like, if you're a competitor, what's the most important thing that you want? It's consistency, right? It's to be able to do the same thing over and over, and to achieve that consistency, and then from there you can grow most easily. Fox kind of a volatile character, but I think what we've really seen over the last couple of years is Light introducing that consistency with really smart decision making, and that's what made me more of a Fox believer because like we've talked about this a lot on the podcast before. I remember when Leo was playing Byleth and we were all like, nah, Byleth is not that good, but Leo though. And I think the argument we used back then was Byleth speed, right? Like she just doesn't have a lot of control over the situations that are in the game, right? Because she cannot change the situation as fast as other characters can. Fox has always been amazing at changing the current situation. He has horizontal mobility, he has vertical mobility, he is one of the, if not the most mobile character in the game. And so it's never been about like the neutral. It's always been to me about the disadvantage and kind of like the swinginess of disadvantage. Let's see if I can get this to focus again. I cannot. All right. I'll fix that in a second. Point being, Fox has always kind of lived and died by that margin of can I destroy you harder in this advantage and you can destroy me. And again, Light's choices have really changed that in Fox's advantage, mostly with doing what people shouldn't do, right? So like most of the time, like one of the biggest advantage state tips that you kind of get from top level players is don't double jump back to the stage, because it's so linear. If you get caught out of a double jump, you just basically die. Fox should double jump back to the stage. He's one of the only characters who can double jump back to the stage, because he has double jump and then he has his fast fall mix. He has a shine to some degree to stall. He has side B to be in an entirely different position. He has directional air dodge is a mix of, everyone does, of course, but then he has the fall speed to complement that as well. And so like what we see from Light is that he's using these types of options that we thought were kind of bad early on to basically avoid early deaths. And while he does get punished for it sometimes, you're gonna have to hit him like 2, 3, 4, 5 times to really make that hit stick. And he's gonna just loop the situation over and over and just really RPS on the reversal. And eventually he just gets out. And I think he has shown time and time again that he can get out of those situations. And even people who know that it's coming really struggle to beat him there. And that to me shows like, yes, there is a way to consistently get out of this advantage with Fox. And yeah, that really made me a Fox believer in the last couple of, especially the last couple of years, but the last couple of months more so than anything. What is your take, Tony?
Okay, wait.
So I'm fairly.
So Tony,
Go ahead,
before you get
Jonas.
into it, I totally forgot to shill in the beginning. If you guys are enjoying the content,
True.
make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to check out Watch the Throne. It's an invitational being thrown together by Smash University, Tweak Talks, Lights Out, and the amazing Watch the Throne team. So, we just had Ken qualify through port. And we also announced that Proto Banham unfortunately cannot make it, but Tarek will be taking his spot. So we got some more European rep, and Tarek killed it in the voting phase. So shout out to Tarek for that. And then on top of that, we also started our Discord subscription service. So if you guys want to check out our Smash University Discord, you can go ahead and subscribe for $5 a month. 90% of that goes to us, and there will be a new channel available to you where you can ask us any questions, and we'll go ahead and answer those questions for you guys. So that's the best way to support Coach's Corner if you guys want to support us. And yeah, all right. Sorry for the interruption, Tony. Go forth and talk about Fox.
So I was going to say, I've been fairly inconsistent on my reading of Fox. So my initial expectation of Fox going into Ultimate was that he would be not a particularly meta choice going into the game, but that he would eventually improve as the game went on. So my perspective of Fox is similar to Ramses. That the idea is that he's easier to play a touch of death game against relative to the rest of the cast, because he's both light and fast faller. Most of the combos that he's just one of the first characters. It's like up there with Donkey Kong of things that you're going to learn to touch of death first. So the idea is that once that becomes more common, though, you can't really push your advantage further past that. So as a larger portion of the cast becomes touch of death, Fox's weakness of being a touch of death character on the receiving end is less of a weakness. And so his pure stats become more useful also as players have higher skill, because he is an excellent vehicle through which you can channel that skill into the game. And so likewise, Light has particularly shown that Fox is one of the best tools that he can use to channel his own skill set through the game. His ability to essentially uh, make you question when you're going to do things and whether those are the correct timings, even if you know what's about to happen and where it's about to happen. It doesn't matter. You have to be able to answer all of these questions correctly at the same time. And if you can't, then you're not entirely correct. And so I was very incorrect on that, because we actually had quite a few Fox players, both in North America and Japan, who made the character relevant almost immediately. And so I would say that he was a meta character from start to finish of the game, and has been so far. The players piloting Fox have changed, but his meta relevance has not so much. I'd say it's just waxed and waned a little bit, but overall, you can still reasonably expect to see a Fox somewhere near top 8.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the big things, especially in the beginning of the game, from players transitioning from Smash 4 to Ultimate Smash 4 Fox, it was a lot easier to get the KOs. It was actually one of his specialties, because he could two frame with up tilt. So the idea was you didn't need to edge guard with Fox because you just two frame them. I think in this game, it's changed because obviously he doesn't have really good he doesn't have consistent two framing options, like a quick, not as laggy option. You have to commit to down smash if you want to seal the stock off, which is still, you can do that. And we've seen Foxes do that when you're feeling confident. It's a quick smash attack. It just has a little lag, frame 6. So it's good. And your legs are intangible. So you'll beat out most options too if they try to peek above the ledge with a hitbox. But I think the biggest thing throughout Ultimate that was a key is how to seal Socks out with Fox, because
There was also, just jumping in real quick, there was also untackable spin in Smash 4, which was huge for Fox.
yes, because of Nair and forward tilt.
Exactly.
And you could just react to the untackable spin, go right into
And
up smash.
Yes.
25% of the time.
Yes.
Yep. RNG, baby.
Horrible mechanic.
Horrible mechanic.
Very like, what the fuck. But so in this game, and then back air was stronger in Smash 4. So in this game, Foxes had to get better at not staling their back air at around, like, you want to not use back air as much at around like 90-ish. So by the time your opponent gets to like 130-ish or so, you can get the back air stock right without a super staled back air. Another thing that has been innovated on the side of getting the KO with Fox is down air optimization, sour dash attack optimization. So sour dash attack is probably the most fucked up move that Fox has, because you pretty much get sent nowhere, and you can even go like sour dash attack into up smash or sour dash attack into back air or up air. We've seen this very, very consistent part of Light's gameplay where he reacts to someone normal get up. He goes for the dash attack, and their normal get up intangibility and goes through the hard hit of the dash attack. So by the time they are done with their intangibility, they're getting hit by the sour hit. And Fox is right up at the edge of the stage, and they are behind Fox technically. So you get a back air follow up almost every time. So if sour dash attack at ledge, if Light didn't innovate that, I don't know how he'd get like half of his stocks. It's very important, and that's why I do agree that Fox doesn't have the offstage game in Ultimate to really, punish some of these bad recoveries. Like the really bad ones like Cloud or Pyramithra, like you can just run off Nair or Shine or something like that. But the better ones like Pikachu and Sonic and Game & Watch and Steve, it's way harder to get an edge guard. But Fox can find a lot of stocks at the ledge and a lot of damage at the ledge just because of how volatile Nair spamming at the ledge is. But like, it's spamming Nair, but there's 50 different variants of Nair spam. Like, I'm gonna short hop. After the short hop, am I gonna like fast fall double jump? Am I gonna slow fall double jump? Am I gonna just like rip the Nair? Am I gonna like land and dash back, right? And it's just, am I gonna full hop instead? There's so many different variants of how to spam Nair at the ledge, but it's so powerful at any percent. And yeah, I just feel like Foxes have done a really good job of innovating how to get the kill, the top level Foxes. And we even saw Light going for things like, right before he hits the ground, he lets a forward air rip, maybe 1 or 2 hits with no fast fall. And if they DI in, or if they just don't DI out and they get caught off guard by the forward air, because usually the forward air has a little bit more horizontal range than Nair. But to whiff punish Nair, you need to be right outside of the Nair range. But if you're right outside of the Nair range, like right outside, and for a juicy whiff, then you're in range of fair. So then the fair connects, and you're expecting to whiff punish. So most players are either like dashing back in or their sticks at neutral. You get hit by that forward air, Light goes into an up air, and then you die. So it's like, to me, it's really sick to see. And obviously I play Fox, so that's why I know the extent of all this information like that much, is because I know that all the things I just said were not really implemented in Light's play pre-quarantine, like sour dash attack stuff, like Nair into down air into up smash stuff, like. And I mean, obviously it was the early part of the game, and then the patch that fixed the down air so we could actually use it because it would work. Because if you don't know, down air used to not work, and sometimes Fox would land a drill, then your opponent would pop up above you with no SDI, and you would be negative on hit, and they could murder you, and you would just die for going for a parry mix-up, because Fox needs down air to work, because if his down air doesn't work, then you always go for a Nair parry, and if the down air connects, fuck it, it's a coin toss. It might not work, so you could just always parry Nair, and then let the coin toss happen for the down air, and you're fine. But now it's different because Downer actually works, and then they buffed Fair. I don't know why they buffed Fair. That was unnecessary. But like now that move's randomly godlike, right? So yeah, I think the innovations of Fox have been very sick, and I think the most important one is Sour Dash Deck. What are your thoughts on just like the innovation of Fox post quarantine, Ramses?
One thing that I think is huge is just the evolution of less trapping. We've talked about this before, how a lot of less trapping now kind of like funnels into corner pressure. And one thing that enables that a lot is vertical control. So realistically, if you're less trapping someone, there are two options that are worst case scenario. One of them is let's jump, and the other one is let's drop. Why? Because they're both unreactable, right? And so for Fox especially, you generally don't want to be ledge jumping against Fox, which is very, very scary because that kind of leaves ledge drop, which is very risky, especially against Fox, who can kind of throw out forward smash. You know what I mean? Like they're not generally gonna, but it's there. I played light, I would know. So the issue there is that you're kind of forced into more of a horizontal scenario, but this also goes for neutral. I think something that I think is really impressive from Light is he often complements his early game with rising fares, because early on Fox combos are not that scary. Like up tilt doesn't really true combo into itself until like you got a decent amount of percent on
30, 40.
like
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And that's exactly the damage you're doing. If you get like rising fair, double jump fair, land on the platform, full hop up air, something like that, right? And I really, really like how Light is finding that. As well as the sour spot dash attacks that you mentioned, he uses it a lot more in neutral as well. Again, to complement his early game, because sour dash attack at 30% just goes into a grab on fast fallers, turn around up tilt on more floaty characters, or even forward air, stuff like that. So just like the way he has a plan for every percent is I think very, very well done. That I think really helped Fox a lot, because I feel like when we used to think about Fox, and I mean like pre-quarantine Fox, it was like, okay, at low percents you get away with a lot of shit because he cannot really punish you, and at high percents you just hold shield because he cannot really punish you. And those are the exact things that Light is now punishing. He's like, oh, you're being rude at low percents. All right, let me use my secondary combo options. Oh, you're holding too much shield. Oh, I know exactly how to flowchart that into something that that actually kills you. So honestly, it's a lot of reward to me in terms of innovations, and Light definitely at the forefront of that. I think outside of that, of course, as the game progresses, we understand more of the interactions, and once we understand interactions, there's less focus on them, right? Because you kind of have them figured out, and then what's more important is the context surrounding interaction. And it makes sense to me, and we see this in every Smash game, that the longer a meta goes on, the more fast characters do well, because once you figure out the interactions, they get more control over the context. And that is another thing that just like Light has been on the forefront of. I think there's almost no better player at instinctively reacting to a given situation. There are times where you just see Light throw out some sort of punish, be ready for something. It's completely unexpected, and I think that's extremely key to playing the character. Because if you have that much control over situations, the question then is how many situations are actually favorable for you. And for Light, that is a lot because of how strong his reflexes are. So honestly, it's like Tony said. I think Fox is an extremely strong vehicle for certain types of skill expression. In this case, more athletic skill expression, like reaction time, decision making speed, stuff like that, accuracy of inputs, huge skill checks for Fox players.
So to build on what Ramses is talking about, there's a lot of commonly accepted layers to the rock paper scissors of ledge trapping and such. Like for example, generally most characters have to directly and preemptively cover ledge jump in order to do so. And when they do so, they're almost always giving up other coverage in order to do so. And so the first layer is generally, well, I'm going to ledge jump because it's good. And then if your opponent overextends too hard trying to cut off your ledge jump, then all of a sudden you just exploit whatever they're giving up. And in Light's case, that is essentially what it comes down to. But Fox can preemptively cover and kind of double tap at the ledge while also still being fast enough to cover other things. And so while that element of coverage is still there, the window in which Fox cannot cover a different ledge option is much narrower and more difficult to time. And you're typically timing this in advance because you can't just react to Fox putting out an air and expect to get a ledge roll off before he's finished his second air. Like he's just so fast. So the idea is you're picking your ledge roll when you see the first air, with the expectation that you're going to start the ledge roll before he can react and stop second air, and so that he's already committed to that second air. And so if you can't hit that window, then what you're going to find is that Fox essentially covers everything. Except even when Fox doesn't cover the ledge jump immediately, you're now above Fox, and he has one of the best juggles in the entire game because he can just always match your horizontal speed using his ground speed, and he can always attack at you directly without worrying about keeping below you because his fastfall speed is so much faster than almost every other character. So that even if they air dodge through something, he's going to land and start his second option before they have initiated their second option. And so I think that's very powerful. Of course, as I mentioned before, Light is particularly skilled at using small windows and small timings. And so I think there's a lot of cases where players just swear off an interaction or a scenario because the risk reward isn't good. And so I think what he tends to kind of approach the problem with is, well, what if I just time it right? And what if I just thread the needle? Then what is your solution to that? And the answer is generally they don't have one. They're just not prepared for that. It's not like you can set a CPU and just set the setting to time it right. So the idea here is that Fox is Fox, and then there's Light Fox, which is kind of like a separate kind of Fox. So I'm not overly familiar with Kananabe, but I think the idea is that what separates Light's performance with Fox from, say, Pasiriman's historically has been that Pasiriman is a very good Fox player, and Light is just kind of his own beast because of the difference in those timing windows, where you can actually say, well, put out your back air and it should cut off his jump in. Whereas Light will say, well, does it cut off my jump in if I did it like 3-4 frames later? And so that very small bit of nuance makes a world of difference when your character is as specced out as Fox is, because he's just so friggin' fast and he hits you so friggin' hard. It's just a very good character overall.
I think one thing to note about Fox as well that I think is powerful, and Aegis is the same, is how much threat they carry while they move around, which I think for like there are more fast characters, but if you compare to like Falcon, like out of a dash, what is his main threat is like dash attack or dash grab, which is not as strong as a Fox dash attack or a Fox rising nair or Mifra, forward tilt, etc. And the same goes for Sonic, right? If Sonic is not already in a spin dash, yeah, he can move around extremely fast, but what threat does he really carry while moving? So that's something that you want to keep in mind as well. Is like it's not just about that control over the movement, it's also like how much flexibility does the movement itself give you. And that is where, like Tony said, the athleticism that Light has changes the dynamic of the character just on basically an inherent level, right? Because if you can perform at that level of reaction time, of decision making speed, the interactions just change. The risk reward changes. The expected outcome, expected value of your choices change, and I think that is what makes Light hard to prepare for. Compared to a Fox like Kaninabe or Paseriman, who are also great players, but like Tony said, they're playing Fox.
Yeah, and I think Light, the how fast he plays is just crazy, right? In terms of like when I think about Fox, the main stats you want to be overtuned in as a player is how fast you play the game, how fast you can make decisions, and how consistent you can be on reactionary tech chasing, whether it be on platforms or on the ground. Before I even dip into Fox, like I do want to talk about Fox's defense with you guys because I do think it's a tad bit underrated. And this is something that even for me recently, I've kind of come to realization of it, because I used to be the one that would just be like, yeah, Fox recovery is like ultra dog shit, like he gets comboed. But I actually think this character is kitted out pretty well defensively outside of his weight. But even offensively, we've all seen this too. But just the optimization of platform tech chasing across the entire cast, I think it's a very meta thing to do. Where like a lot of players before was like, okay, let me just get this combo, right? And like, let me get this rising aerial into another rising aerial. But now we're seeing people hit someone, and it's like, okay, instead of going into the second rising aerial, I can reposition myself, right? And then they're gonna have to like tech on the platform, and then I can just set up like this falling aerial. And traditionally in Smash, you want a falling aerial because it gives you more frame advantage. If you're privileged like Fox, it doesn't matter. You just do the rising up air on reaction, and you still get the same up air, up air, up air, up air combo. But other characters like Cloud or Corrin, they can put you on a platform tech chase, jump up, skip a beat, and then after they skip that beat, they up air, and it covers everything, and they combo off of it, right? So this is across the entire board, that a lot of players have been optimizing platform tech chasing and what moves put your opponents on platforms, and then setting up the actual platform tech chase. You know, we've seen Ferps do that with Kazuya as well with the OS. So that has helped Fox's offense a lot because his horizontal combo game is not as consistent as his vertical combo game. You can go like dash tack nair, but there's like holes in it. Some 2-frame air dodges get through, frame 1 outs for sure get through, but like you can up air Luigi 4 times with Fox and he will not be able to down B. Like that is like one of the most true combos in Smash. Just Fox up air and up air, right? So it very like extremely consistent vertical combo game, and seeing the Fox player base convert that into being like, okay, let me dash tack, but instead of going for the follow-up, I'm trying to get in a dash tack to put him on the platform, get an up throw to put him on the platform, let me back throw to put him on the platform, right? Like there's so many, and then I've been saying like a lot of these things are grabs, which is broken because you're supposed to shield versus Fox, right? So when you're supposed to shield against Fox, right? Shield against Fox, and then it's like, wait, I shielded against Fox and I took 80 damage because he put me on a platform, and then he reactionary tech chased me on a platform and I took 80. Like, well, I thought I was supposed to shield. Like, so there's a lot of things that just brings Fox's damage output like to a pretty high consistency. And yeah, I just wanted to mention the platform tech chasing because that's just been a meta relevant thing, and it's ultra good for Fox. Now, kind of pivot before we get into different playstyles for Light and Katanabe and Pasiriman, I think one thing to talk about is Fox's defense. This is something that I used to say Fox had like shit defense until maybe like the last year or two, but I feel like Fox is one of the hardest characters to juggle. So off stage, he's susceptible, but we'll even get into that on my opinion on his off stage. But let's start off with his biggest strength. His biggest strength in disadvantage is how hard it is to juggle. Not only do you have to respect falling nair on the fastest faller in the game that leads into your death or into a lot of damage. So like the reversal potential is insane. And reacting to Fox nairing fast falling is like very difficult to do. So you have to clear out of the way. Thank God he doesn't have good air mobility. So his like I call it like a tent or a web or a triangle for a character. They're different like mix-ups, right? So it doesn't go wide for Fox. It's like, okay, well, he can kind of like from here, he can drift down this way. For the audio listeners, I'm just it's you just don't have a lot of air mobility. So you can't really go wide with it, but you also have double jump, and you also have one of the best neutral air dodges in the game. And on top of that, you have some of the fastest ground options in the game. So when you do neutral air dodge through someone swinging at you, there's times where I've neutral air dodge into someone and it's like brawl style. Like I just neutral air dodge into someone in the ground, and then they do some move and I'm like, all right, cool, up smash. Because I used to do that in brawl with like DDD up tilt, right? That was like a famous way
Oh
to
yeah.
get stocks in brawl with DDD. You would do neutral air dodge to the ground and then buffer an up tilt, and then your up tilt had some intangibility.
Shout out to SK92 who would approach with Falco air dodge and then just jab someone.
Yeah.
And then he would do like rapid jab, and it didn't have a finisher back then. So he would rapid jab and then roll behind you and rapid jab you again. And then he was just like roll behind you and rapid jab you again. It was great. That was the Falco approach, short of air dodge jab.
So obviously in Ultimate, the neutral air
Yeah.
dodge isn't as lagless as Brawl, but it's pretty close. There's a little bit of lag, but again, Fox has such quick options on the ground. You could probably at least get a jab. You can for sure get out your shield defensively, or you can go into jab in front of you, which is frame 2. You can go for an option behind you, which is frame 3 with up tilt. Or if you have a lot of frame advantage and they throw out something really laggy, you can just up smash them with a frame 8 up smash that has a ton of range, right? So the reversal potential off the juggle for Fox is probably one of the most volatile in the game. So I do think he's one of the hardest characters to juggle. So, and then on top of that, you have a Shine Stall. So one of the hardest meta characters to juggle in the entire game because of the fast fall speed and the reversal potential. And then off stage, I don't think it's even that bad. Illusion is pretty slow. So Illusion should be pretty easy to edgeguard in this game, but Firefox is a ridiculously large hitbox. So in previous Smash games, the hitbox on Firefox wasn't that big and it didn't have that much knockback. Like there would be times where you would get hit and like you wouldn't even have to like tech the stage. You would just like, or you would just hit them after you got hit by the Firefox, or you would just like jump back onto stage. You would generally have frame advantage after getting burned by Firefox. But in this game, it's way different. Like for some reason, they made the hitbox really big. They made it do a lot of knockback, so you can randomly die at like 30% if you don't hit the tech. I mean, at top level play, that should usually not be happening, but like the fact that it can happen is really dumb. So I personally think Firefox is a little overtuned in this game. I think your character's pretty privileged if you can edgeguard Firefox. That's how strong Firefox is. Not every character. There's so many matches where Fox can sink low, and it's like you can't really do much. You might be able to like specifically read my angle and get like a very specific down air timing, but for the most part, you have a decent amount of mix-ups, and again, your reversal potential is pretty strong off the Firefox. Still, again, susceptible off stage, and top tier characters have answers to this, but it's not like all these mid and low tier characters can just throw Fox off stage at 0 and just get a freebie. You know what I mean? So it is still pretty, I wouldn't say difficult. I do think the top level player base could be edge guarding Fox better, but obviously it's still not as easy as the previous game. So I do think there's some merit to like top players not being like, oh, I've solved the Fox off stage game. What are your thoughts, Ramses, on Fox's like defenses in general?
I have to agree with the juggling aspect for sure. I think he is one of, if not the hardest character to juggle. Well, not the. I think we have Zero Suit and Joker in this game. It's, but he's up there, right? He's one of the hardest characters to juggle.
Maybe even Steve,
and again,
putting blocks, right? Like
Steve, right? Yeah. Steve's up there. You can argue even something like Shoke with Jump Hard or Hero Accelerato, but like he's up there. Point is, I talked about this briefly at the start of the session where I said, well, we see Light double jumping back to the stage when normal characters really should not be doing that. And that kind of goes back to that vertical control. You do not want to be under Fox. You do not want to be above Fox, right? Like both of those are bad. If you're under Fox, he has so much control over when he's coming down because of how much his fast fall increases his fall speed. Because fast falls are percentual increases, right? So if you have a if you are a fast faller, then your fast fall makes you 40%, I think 40% faster in terms of your fall speed. That's a larger increase for Fox than it is for floaties, which is also why floaties struggle to get out of the air. So generally being under Fox means that he still has a lot of control over what situation he's in realistically. And that is, again, partially because of the fall speed, partially because of the shine stall, partially because of the air dodge, partially because of the nair, etc., etc. And the worst case is if he gets like that nair fast fall and you jump too late, you get hit by the weak nair, you die to up smash, right? So like it's not just being hard to hit. It's also that if you're wrong, you can die at like 90 plus or 80 if you're a little bit lighter. So yeah, really, really hard to juggle Fox. And I think what kind of goes hand in hand with that is that he can force a lot of situations into more vertical ones because he has a decently high full hop. Double jump. And that's what we're seeing when Light gets hit again. He just double jumps back to the stage. And what we're also seeing from Light, which I think is something that goes unsaid, is how much he prioritizes center stage, which like every top player does. But for Light, it goes like a step further because the difference is if he gets hit by like a back air from center, he can double jump and make the situation vertical. If he gets hit by a back air at like 1/3 towards the corner, he cannot double jump and get back to the stage. He would have to play from the ledge, and from the ledge, again, it just becomes that much harder to turn it into a vertical situation. So that is what I think really makes Light's defense especially work, is his tendency to play for center, as well as his tendency to turn things into vertical situations. Even if he gets punished by them, like a lot of the times you can just fast fall air dash to the ground as Fox, and even if they punish you, you've just landed. You got your double jump back, right? So you double jump, fast fall air dash, they hit you with the back air. All right, you got your jump back. You took the hit. You got some information. You can try again most of the time. So that's big. I think illusion to ledge is not great. It's a matchup thing, right? Like some characters can fuck you up for it. Some characters don't really have great down tilts to punish you. Like I play Shoke. I would have to like run a fair to call you out, right? Like I cannot down tilt your side B to ledge. But the weakness lies in the fact that you're in the same position for like 25 frames as your side being, and on top of that, a lot of you can side B in a way to avoid the 2-frame vulnerability, but the spacing is pretty precise. So what most foxes do is they drop low and then they jump up, and then in the apex of their jump they'll float around the height, wait until they're at the right height, and then they side B. But what we see from like really good foxes is that they just side B as they're dropping, and they're avoiding the 2-frame window, or they jump and they cancel the upward momentum with the side B, and then they avoid the 2-frame window. So not having to stall in the apex of your double jump to get the right height on your side B, that's like a huge part of being a really, really good fox player, and Falco player for that matter as well. Falco has a little bit harder because his double jump has insane acceleration, but yeah.
But
So
its
that's
illusion's
something
very
that's huge.
fast.
Exactly. It's faster, and it sucks because if you're used to Fox, and Falco's gonna mess you up, and vice versa. Anyway, so that's huge. And in terms of Firefox, so I think you're right in that the move is better than it should be. I also think it gets super hard countered by ledge slip, and no one is ledge slipping.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, we're not seeing ledge slip specifically against Fox, because Fox loves the ride the stage mix up, right? Which ledge slip counteracts. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the nice thing is, if you're positioning to down tilt a illusion to ledge, you're also in ledge flip position because you're crouching at the corner of the stage, right? And then if he does use Firefox, you just get to react and drop down with your aerial. You can do it early, late, and a lot of the time he will have to like hard commit. Like let's say we have like the stage and he's like going for a diagonal to ledge angle. If you ledge slip, he could go like upwards and then drift towards the stage. But that would be like such a hard commitment. It basically loses to anything except for you committing to the ledge slip. So stuff like that, it just makes life really, really hard for Fox. So while I think his defense is better than you'd think because of how strong he is vertically, I do think if people start ledge slipping, his Firefox stops being as effective. And I think it was especially apparent at Shine. This was the last Shine, right? The most recent one. It was Zomba versus Light grand finals, and I distinctly remember this because I remember Zomba doing really well. I know Light took it at the end, but one thing that really worked out for him was just like down air 2-framing all of the Firefox usage from Light. And I think similar to how down air covers most of what Firefox wants to do, I think ledge slip is just a very similar tool, and I think that would make it a lot harder for Light. But I mean, that's on paper. I know, like I play Shulk, so like ledge slip for me is different than for other characters. But I imagine like even for Roy, you ledge slip fair, you ledge slip counter. Same for Peach, ledge slip counter. A lot of these meta characters can just get a lot of good gimping out of that position. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. And the huge thing about defense, of course, that has to be mentioned is just like how easy it is to combo. I think for example, I think Steve, if Steve didn't have the jab train, that matchup would be even or maybe even Fox favored. It's literally just the jab train that makes it like that, just fucks up the risk reward of almost like every situation that Fox normally wants to be in. His low range means he has to interact, which is great for characters like Ryu and Kazuya and Game & Watch, especially Game & Watch. So yeah, like part of his defense is also like how well are you covering a worst case scenario? And that's the downside of Fox, is like you have a pretty bad worst case scenario. I think worse than the average top tier. And I think that is where most of his flaws lie, in that he has to take these risks to fight up close, and that he does get comboed to death by all of these characters that fight at the same range that he wants to fight. And that's not stopping anytime soon, because if anything, we're going to see more Steve, not less. So more Game Watch too, probably, if like if anyone is going to take inspiration from Mia and Meister too. Especially at Port, right, where we saw we had 2 Game Watches in contention for a decent placing. I think Meister was there, right? Yeah, he was. He got 25th, 17th, something like that. Yeah, so like Meister was there, Mia was there. You had Pocket running amok. You had Akala, of course. Like that is already like 4 major threats to your character, just in terms of just like matchup. And that has everything to do with your defense and risk reward. So time will tell. how well the defense matches up against the offense that these characters can bring. What do you
Well,
think, Tony?
to kind of meld together a few different points that you've made across this topic. So I know you mentioned earlier that he kind of segments out his combos, especially at like low percents. But the idea being that he's trying to win to put you into a percentage so that his other options will open up. And I think that that's a kind of segmentation that we usually see in a game like Melee, where players are generally playing around things like crouch cancel windows and such, and looking for specific setups. But similar to how it now works in Melee, now that the game has been given enough time, I believe that Light in particular has found so many different ways to flow those together that it's just a very organic procedure. And I think that it also works its way into how he plays a longer adaptation. So across the set, I think that we will see him kind of ramp up his speed, but I think that something that gets undersold a little bit that goes into Charles's point on defense is that what Light does a lot is that he'll push up his speed so that his opponents have to push up their speed just to keep in contention and not get overwhelmed. And then he'll just slam on the brakes. And so he'll start turtling, he'll shield camp and just wait for parries. And he'll start playing really slow because the opponent is generally trading off some of their decision making in order to play faster. And so they'll start making decisions that would open themselves up to more vulnerable parries. And so that's where Light really goes off to the races is once his defense starts. And you can even kind of see that in his neutral. He has a big magician energy, and that he likes to use things that look like attacks that are actually just he will jump in with full hop aerials and then hard pull back so that it looks like he's about to overextend, and you'll almost always see him retreat to see if his opponent bit the bait. And oftentimes what you'll see is he'll just run up and he'll preemptively start running up so that if they backed up away from whatever he just showed them, that he'll take up the stage control, and that if they try and chase it, because his reflexes are so fast, he'll just literally press the A button because he's already holding toward the opponent. And so what'll happen is you'll see them just run up into his dash attack, and he'll just stuff their offense with his own offense. But ultimately, this all starts with kind of a essentially big looking poking. So he's just using big control stick footsies. Is essentially what it comes down to. And when I think of footsies, I generally classify that as a more defensive position to take. And so I think that just because Fox is so fast and moves so much, that a lot of the defense that Light uses appears to be more aggressive than it actually is. And likewise, I think that Fox's answer to a lot of these problems going forward is more defense. So I believe you mentioned the Steve jab train, so I'll use that as an example. Yes, Fox is vulnerable to Steve jab, but unlike Steve, Fox can choose to just not be in that space to be jabbed. He doesn't necessarily have to go in. So, like something Fox can do is he can just avoid Steve for the whole game. And Charles's favorite is we really need timer Fox in the matchup.
Oh yeah, timeout Fox. That's the answer.
Yes, timeout Fox is the answer to Steve. So the with that said, that does require
On paper.
Yes, on paper.
On paper.
But as we said, it's very. I don't think it's realistic for Fox players to do that. But I also don't think that most of the things that Light does are very realistic to do, and he very clearly does it when he shows up. So if Light were hypothetically to push that point, that is a way that I can definitely see him doing it. Is actually just don't be there. Just don't get hit by Steve, because there is theoretically nothing Steve can do to beat Fox just holding away from Steve. Because what will happen is Steve will catch Fox into a corner, and he can also build blocks to affect what that corner is going to look like. But at the end of the day, Fox isn't just faster than Steve on the ground; he's also faster than him in the air. And usually, the air or Fox's airspeed is enough of a weakness that when he goes in the air, that his opponents can catch him down. That's less true for Fox versus Steve in particular, just because Steve doesn't exactly have the best air acceleration either. And so usually he has enough that he'll still be able to get between Fox and wherever Fox is going, because he is going to have decent enough relative acceleration, plus he'll have stage control, plus the block formations to potentially set up. but that is where I would expect to see that go next. And then just one side note to make it. I know Ramses mentioned using things like air dodge to get down to the ground and being willing to take a hit. That's also something we're seeing more often with foxes using from offstage. So you'll see them double jump and fox illusion on purpose to get hit. So
Mhm.
if they see you taking your lich trap position, they'll intentionally fox illusion right on top of you, so that you'll have to do something like narrow shield, and so that it hits you, crosses them up, and sends fox on stage. So worst case scenario, fox gets hit, but it's usually going to end up being a neutral reset, and fox still gets to skip the position entirely. Or we'll probably get into this a little bit more as we start talking about other fox players, but something Poseriman does that's a vulnerability, as I recall, is that he specifically has the habit of just consistently going for very high recoveries, where he'll just straight up double jump side B towards center on the top
Yeah.
blast zone. And he knows that you'll be there to juggle him, but Fox is just so good at being juggled that he just doesn't care. Like he'll signal you seconds in advance. Everybody knows it's coming. Just got to punish it. But if
Yep.
you can't do that, then it doesn't matter that you see it coming. So
I think to kind of touch upon that as well. I think a lot of what Fox does is force execution checks more so than a lot of other characters because of how fast the character is, and because of how big of a core weakness his weight and disadvantage in a way is, right? Like if you think like what are Fox's weaknesses, right? And like one of the main ones is
The
he's
weight.
light.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's light and his recovery is abusable. And then like you can argue he's bad against shield, which is I think questionable.
I think that's out of date at this point.
Exactly.
It's pretty
That's
capped. Yeah.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So like you have to be on point with your position, execution, reaction, etc., etc. And then like Tony said, if you have a player like Light who also forces you to make speedy decisions, on top of that, it just gets really really hard to pass all of the execution checks at that level of speed, which is also why I think a player like Luto, who is similarly athletic, does pretty well in general against Light.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Wario does well in that matchup, but like it's also
Fair enough.
it is also very hard to keep up with Light no matter the character you pick, right? Just because of how fast Light is and how fast Fox is comparatively to the rest of the rest of the cast. So yes, I do agree with you in terms of like Gluto's quote unquote like video game athletic abilities having like really good adaptation, probably one of the best adapters in the game, and then on top of that having like the reaction and stuff, right? The reaction, the game
Decision
sense.
making speed.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to throw Gluto into a loop unless you're playing him in a matchup he's not too familiar with. Like that's like the
Yeah.
only like I would say that's
Plus,
Gluto's biggest weakness is just like a matchup check, right?
yeah. Plus, he has like infinite stamina. That's also something to keep in mind, right? Like Light as well. Light stamina is bottomless? Question mark. He will play his heart out in like grand final set 2 at 1 a.m. Gluto is similar, and I think like there like you'd be surprised at how few players can do that. Because like a bracket is just grueling. It's a lot of heavy lifting.
I think Port Priority is the first event that I've ever spoken with Bluto about where he actually ran out of stamina.
That's
And
insane.
that was we're talking about like a 12-hour tournament day on 9 hours of jet lag with little to no rest in between. And in that kind of event in a foreign continent, he still made it. He still made it far enough that I don't think most people would fault him for that bracket run, but he was tapped out that day. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was
it's definitely a testament. I think
usually
most of the players were pretty much tapped out by the time they made that to that top 8.
Before. Easily
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
yeah, for
sure.
context, most tournaments are over a 3-day period, and then if you're European or Japanese, it's like would benefit you to come out that extra day earlier on Wednesday or like land at the event on Wednesday, and then like Thursday you're trying to reset your sleep schedule, and then Friday it's like you're still resetting your sleep schedule, but you're probably playing pools, so you don't need to be like fully ready. So I mean, we're talking like a 4 to 5 day prep period to try and get acclimated to your surroundings until the final like top 8 or something like that, right? And then even that the day before is probably going to be like a top 8 qualifiers and like playing from top 64, top 128 to top 8. This tournament, Port Party 8, was a 2-day event, and they had a Friday pre-day local, but I don't know what days like all the out of state or out of country players came in. So it could have been pretty like it sounds like they might have not had a lot of time to adapt to their surroundings, right? So because so Saturday the event started and played all the way till top 128, and then Sunday was top 128 until the end of the tournament. So I mean, it's a lot of playing, right?
That's a
And
lot. Yeah.
and our rule set and just Smash in general compared to other fighting games, like strap in. A set can be well over 30 minutes, easily well over 30 minutes of best of 5, right? Just because we just Smash, there are a lot of interactions, or there can be a lot of interactions in a game. There can be volatile matchups like, SkyJ versus Riddles. Obviously that's not going to go to time by any means, or even close to half of it. But still, there tends to be a lot more interactions in Smash comparatively to other fighting games, and that's just like how our rule set has been for quite some time. I guess now moving on to different like play styles. So Kaninabe obviously making a huge splash in Port Party 8. He's been doing really well in Japan as well, so was able to make top 8, a couple top 8s, I think, and some of the tournaments over in Japan. And this is the strongest region we're talking about, so I think it's cool that we're seeing another Fox player on the come up in Japan, and Pasiriman has been doing pretty well with Fox. I think Kaninabe has had, better results as of recent, but Pasiriman always like held it down. And like I said, even pre-quarantine would get pretty close placings to Light at something like Frostbite, which is a international event. I guess before I even get into playstyle, another thing I forgot to mention about Fox's defense is ledge drop double jump options are very good. Like really, 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 really good. Ledge drop double jump fair is huge. Ledge drop double jump down air, you get a lot off of. You can actually get a ledge drop double jump down air, and if they're at like 0 to 30, you can chain it into like 2 or 3 up airs. So his reversal potential from almost every part of disadvantage except offstage is pretty volatile. And it used to be even better in the previous games when illusion could cross up your shield. So yeah, I just remember being a Fox player in Smash 4 and then playing Ultimate, and I was so lost on the ledge. I was getting ledge trapped. I'm like, man, why is my ledge defense so dog shit? Like, I don't know how to get off the ledge, and it's because all I did was spam illusion from ledge, or it was like a coin toss. It's like, am I going to illusion or am I not? Like, and then play, like, you would literally have to position yourself like center stage or throw out specific meaty hitboxes to beat out illusion being able to cross up shield in previous Smash games. So again, not as crazy, but you still have pretty good ledge drop double jump options as Fox.
Having undershoot, overshoot RPS from disadvantage is pretty ridiculous. Like it's a pretty short list of characters that can do that, and they're all considered to have pretty strong disadvantage.
Right, exactly. So getting into play styles though, I think after thinking about it more, it's like I want to say Kaninabe's peaks of his combo game, like it feels like he does the nerdy shit more often, but Light feels more of like a practical combo game. But I've also seen Light do some fucking crazy shit. I've seen Light do like the down tilt into triple raw back air fast fall, so he could line them all up into ending with an up smash. I've definitely seen Light do some nerdy combos as well. But I think overall, Light is better than Kaninabe in every single category except recovery. Because I also think Light's corner pressure and ledge trapping game, like he just wrote the book on it. And I think Kaninabe is still catching up in that regard. But yeah, Light gets a hit and his combo game feels more consistent, and then his reset game is disgusting. Like he'll go for, dash attack up, like it's so intentional every single reset. And the way I like to explain it is there's sometimes like you can watch a Fox player, and there's sometimes where a Fox player will get a hit, but they think they can combo. Light knows that he can't combo in so many scenarios, but he will reset the scenario. But like there's never a situation where I see Light go for a swing and I'm like, oh, I could tell he didn't know that was like a reset or wasn't a true combo. Like he knows all of those niche scenarios, so he knows when to go for the reset. He knows when something's true. So his combo game is just so consistent. And I think Kaninabe was pretty good at getting stray hits. He had some pretty impressive edge guards against Tweak. He was really fortunate to get that jab KO on game 5 against Tweak off the Town and City platform, like going out with the rapid jab. That was like
that was funny.
Yes, like and the fact that in this game, so in Smash 4, Kanenabe probably would have also lost the stock, but in Ultimate, the platform actually disappears. The platform doesn't travel off.
Yeah.
So Kanenabe was in the end lag of his jab, but then since the platform poofs, he like was just airborne and he was good. So it's pretty insane in terms of like what they I mean, I think overall it's better for the platform to like disappear like that, but in like in Smash 4, that probably just would have been a stock trade because it was ending from the lag. But um even regardless of getting that rapid jab KO, like it was still a very impressive reverse 3-0, and he was able to get like specific fair drag down setups, and then just like once you get Diddy with no jump and he's like charging barrels, Fox is such a good drop zone edge guarder, which is why against sword characters like Fox usually doesn't have a good offstage game, but against characters like Lucina, Marth, or like characters that like to dip low and then up be up, Fox is so good at drop zone edge guarding. And when I say drop zone edge guarding, I mean like running off and like dropping down to the area where you think your opponent will double jump to up B, right? So if I'm like, okay, let me time this. Lucina's about to double jump to line up B. I run off his Fox and I drop zone, which is like, he's good at it because he's a fast faller, right? So he's able to drop in that area really quick, have that sour nair already out there, or shine if you're feeling like really spicy. And then you just intercept that path, right? And that is one thing that Fox is decently solid at. And usually like a lot of these sword characters, once you nip them, or just like even if you hit them with sour nair, you know, from their double jump, they're pretty fucked after that. So they really, really depend on that double jump for the recovery. So yeah, I mean, it's I feel like I was just ranting, but what was the main point? Oh yeah, Kanenabe versus playstyles, yes. Yeah, Kanenabe had very impressive recoveries. Oh, I was talking about Kanenabe's offstage, yeah. So Kanenabe, I think Light still has better offstage. They're pretty close in that regard. But I do think Kanenabe had very creative recoveries. He had recoveries I've never seen before, and I've been watching a lot of Fox. So very innovative and creative recoveries. And yeah, God, I don't even know. I still feel like Light just beats him out. I don't think it's like a huge gap or anything. Like Kanenabe was able to beat Leo and Tweak the first time they played. That's fucking crazy. Like in a matchup that they both know. So, I mean, that obviously one of the matchups is in favor of Kanenabe because Fox does well against Diddy. But I assume Joker still wins versus Fox. Worst case, it's even. Like, so, man, I mean, incredible stuff by Kanenabe. I also think Light's very good at getting grabs, which sounds kind of troll because it's like you don't want to be that good at getting grabs with Fox, but that's why I think Light's neutral is better than Kanenabe's because he just grabs more often. And it feels like Kanenabe relies more on Fox's hitboxes, which isn't a bad strategy. Obviously, he has really, really good hitboxes. But yeah, Light feels a bit more consistent and well-rounded in every other department except recovery. What are your thoughts, Ramses?
Interesting. So what I think, very, very surface level, is whenever I look at Light, I feel like his movement is usually for the sake of an eventual attack that he's looking for. And very, very rarely does he move just for the sake of moving, if that makes sense. Whereas with Kanenabe, I think a lot of his movement is for the sake of just being flexible, moving around, creating, well, basically seeing what the opponent wants to do, right? And for Light, if he moves and you don't respond correctly, he will use that and run in and hit you. Whereas for Kanenabe, he will move. If you don't respond correctly, he will continue moving until he gets the response that he wants. And I think that the difference there is that Kanenabe will generally be more ready for, let's say, the optimal choices, whereas Light is better at forcing you to make the decision that he wants you to make. That is what I think is the difference at a surface level. Now, I'm not saying like Light's movement is bad. I think Light's movement is fucking amazing, but his movement is information gathering for him to get what he wants. Whereas for Kanenabe, his movement is for him to confirm what he was expecting. That is, I think, the essential difference. And I think that also kind of aligns with the Japanese playstyle. When you look at Japanese players, a lot of the time they'll take more time to confirm what's going on. They will take more time to set up a good position. They will take more time to cover things with hitboxes, like you said, Charles, instead of being aggressive with the hitboxes. And I think Kaninabe is a lot of that. He's also a crackhead. Don't get me wrong. Like, he will go out there and throw something out there that shouldn't work. And I think that is what makes him scary to play against. Is that like there is some sort of switch in there. I don't know what flips it. But he does that very well. Whereas with Light, I think, and I think this is what makes Light better. I think everything that he does is synergistic with itself. He is a an ocean of positive feedback loops, and it's a positive feedback whirlpool. And as soon as he gets a start, it just keeps giving that positive feedback. Whereas with Kaninabe, I feel like there's two separate players in there, essentially two separate strategies that also complement each other, but the information he gains from one doesn't necessarily translate into the other.
So I can't really speak on Kananabe. I'm not familiar with his play at all, but regarding Light and Pasiriman in particular, I would say that Pasiriman's approach to the game is more akin to a Street Fighter jump-in based neutral, where the idea is he'll start something to kind of pressure your shield, and then he'll jump in, or he'll jump in, and then if he thinks that you feel pressured enough to commit to your shield, then he'll just repeatedly jump in on you and just keep safe jumping in until you can't block anymore, because Fox's Nair Fox's Nair and down air are both surprisingly good at shield stabbing. And I think that what ultimately it comes down to is that Light is not going to give you enough of a window to react to a full hop in the first place. Like, if he's doing that, he's using it as a specific mix up for once, and it's not really so much as a core part of his plan. Makes the idea there is that he's more inclined to do things like grab you just because it's going to be faster. And so he's more likely to do things like go for directly like the jab. So he's more likely to commit into a multi-jabbing a shield if he thinks that his opponent is going to try and press something, because again, Light is more of a tempo-based player than I would say anyone else that I'm aware of. So if what he reads is less a matter of A, B, and C rather than what speed you're going to be pressing your button. And I'm under the impression that that's how he interprets the game for the most part on his decision making. And so the idea there is that what he's going to do is he's going to play on his rhythm until you can match his rhythm. And then once you've matched his rhythm, he now essentially is controlling what speed you're pressing your buttons. And so he can basically play both sides of the game for you, since he's essentially choosing what you're doing in your controller. So at that point, the level of counterplay for that is just whatever Light thinks is going to be best at the time and on speed. And so I think that for Pasiriman, though, it's more a matter of Pasiriman knows what he wants, and he's going to generally focus around fighting to get it rather than trying to adapt to his opponent. So I think Pasiriman's plan is more proactive, which usually I correlate with being a more consistent plan. However, I think I'll be blunt. It's just there's so much of a skill gap that it doesn't matter. Like Light's just a better player. So I think that's what it comes down to.
It's not just a skill gap between Light and Pasariman. It's just like the skill set that Light has is very unique in how well developed it is.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the only other players who even come close are we've already mentioned comparison, but like another one I would compare him with is Meister. So I think Meister attacks at a very similar dimension where he's specifically reading what his opponent's controller is going to be doing rather than just looking at what's on the screen. And so I think that's a very powerful way to attack, if only because it's so uncommon that your opponents are probably not specifically prepared for it. So, and the best place to attack your opponent is almost always what is the most powerful thing you can do that the opponent is unprepared to defend against. And so, even when you get like a slugger matchup, it's usually a matter of both players just trying to push their advantage, and whichever one isn't ready to defend is just going to lose on the spot. So,
yeah, and I think Pasiriman also innovated the more defensive play of Fox. I know, especially pre-quarantine or like right after quarantine, Light. I don't think Light's defensive play in terms of like bringing out the laser and camping center stage, because I think nowadays we see Light doing a lot of lasers. We see Light, or not a lot, but like we it is very clear when Light like he is signaling to his opponent that I'm not just going to run at you. And the first couple years of Ultimate, he just ran at people. I mean, to be fair, 80% or more of the player base did that because that's the fun thing to do. But now we're in year 5, time to bring out the camp, right? And yeah, yeah, you know the vibes. And
You know the vibes.
yeah, I think Basiri Man started doing that earlier than Light, and I thought that was like one of his bigger strengths. But now Light is also mixing in the defense with the offense, or even when he was up against Hurt, the Snake player just brought out the laser, was just like, you're gonna have to approach me with Snake. And I can laser to detonate grenades, I can do a bunch of this stuff. So I think Light's defensive play is leveled up and caught up and even surpassed Basiri Man's. But when I think of Basiri Man, that was the thing that stood out to me in the earlier days, was just the laser game, the more defensive movement combined with offensive movement. I think that's what makes like these speedy characters so deadly, right? Because you're combining both. And yeah, I think Light just does, man, an incredible job. I love how you talked about how the rhythm thing with Light in terms of just like he's adapting to the rhythm of which you press buttons. Because if you don't know, most of these top players, they're like raw reactions where it's like, oh yeah, click your mouse when it turns green instead of red. They're not that impressive. Like, it's not like they have inhuman reactions. But especially players like Light, if they anticipate a group of options, like this is what Light's extremely good at, anticipating a group of options and reacting to them. This is the same skill set you use for tech chases. So this is the same skill set you use for ledge trapping, right? If you know when your opponent's going to pick a ledge option, then, I don't think he ledge traps like that, because Fox doesn't have, the way you do that is you threaten ledge hang, and Fox doesn't have that many options to threaten ledge hang. He just has a bunch of active options that will cover everything almost by default. But for tech chasing and platform tech chasing, that is absolutely what it is. It's you are anticipating a group of options, you react to them, right? And when Light catches on to your rhythm, he like positions himself as Fox and then goes ahead and just reacts to that group of options, right? So yeah, I mean, great stuff. And did you guys have any last words about Fox or any of the Fox players, Ramses?
Not really. I think we discussed a lot of the core things here. Again, fast characters just get better at people as people get better at the game. Really exciting character. I hope to see more of Kaninabe. I really enjoyed watching him. I always like seeing new takes on characters that usually have like one rep. Like a Bayo, right? We have multiple Bayo reps. Always fun to see the difference between those. Yeah, no further comments. I really, really enjoyed the discussion today. It was fun.
Yep. Always a pleasure discussing our best DDR player in the community.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode of Coach's Corner, if you guys enjoyed the content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, class dismissed.